Hello everyone, this is Rubaid and I'm presenting this paper I've worked on with my colleague Abdullah Abouloz. The paper titled The Distorted Identity, the Non-Belonging and the Millennial Saudi-Born Palestinians, and we tried our best to make this presentation as short and as informative as possible, and I hope it is. So in this paper we're trying to understand the experience of non-belonging and alienation of the Palestinians living in Saudi Arabia, and how is that experience forms a fundamental component of the Palestinian identity of these people. We are also examining the impact of the recent economic burdens that were imposed by the Saudi government on non-Saudis during the recent 2 years, and how did that contribute to deepening and renewing the sense of non-belonging among Palestinians living in the country, and particularly those who were born and raised in Saudi Arabia. So the research importance comes from that the Palestinian community in the country, in Saudi Arabia, is one of the largest and oldest Palestinian communities. There is over 500,000 of Palestinians living in Saudi Arabia. However, these people are not, as we see, studied enough, this group of people. It is not only about the numbers. It's not only about that these people live in Saudi Arabia and they are a huge community. It is also that the Palestinian community in Saudi Arabia represent a source of financial support for Palestinians, whether inside Palestine or in diaspora communities in the Arab world, in Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. Which means the recent economic burdens imposed on this community did not only affect the community, so the impact was not limited to this community of people living in this particular country. It also had a greater impact on the wider community of Palestinians. So moving to Palestinians, how they are living in Saudi Arabia. So usually Palestinians are receiving kind of special treatment in other countries because most of them are stateless, they're considered as refugees, but that's not the case in Saudi Arabia because this country is not a state party of the 1951 Convention relating the status of refugees and its protocol and other conventions, which means that these Palestinians are living in Saudi Arabia and be treated as any other foreigners, so they're subject to the same regulations. They live under the sponsorship system, which means that any foreigner living in the country has to have a sponsor, and this sponsor could be an individual or a company. They also have limited access to public health services, education, jobs, and so on. So in this research, we adopted an ethnographic research approach. And we are the researchers, me and my colleague, are members of these communities in a way or another. So we are insiders, we are participant observers. And ethnography, as it transforms basic life skills into research techniques, was the best way for us to study this community. So what we did is that we collected information and data through long, in-depth interviews, and of course we used our daily observation on a daily basis as members of this community. So moving to the research sample, so we interviewed Saudi-born Palestinians between the age of 18 and 35. They live in Riyadh and Jeddah, Riyadh as the capital, Jeddah as the second important city. The members of the sample were identified or selected through snowball sampling. We found it the most feasible and the most usable method with such a population that is self-identified. And this population is generally absent from any official statistics. Also, this group of people have complete lack of first-hand experience with their home country. They are separated from their homeland, and the vast majority of them do not know any other society other than the Saudi society. They are also unable to return. They cannot connect with the community of their origin, whether completely or with very limited access. Also, most of them have recently, or have during the last decade, they have entered the Saudi labor market and they have experienced the increasing legal discrimination created um, by the state toward landlockers, which means that this generation, especially those born in the 90s and 80s, had fewer job opportunities compared to the previous generations of Palestinians. Moreover, their lives are characterized by a wide range of contemporary social changes that are taking place in Saudi Arabia, and that they have afflicted the Saudi society. However, in this experience is shared with the rest of the Saudi born of other nationalities. So, moving to the observation, millennial Palestinians clearly distinguished between Saudi Arabia as a society from Saudi Arabia as a government. So when they speak about the society, they speak differently than when they speak of the government. So when they talk of the government, there is a sense of feeling of rejection, lack of appreciation, feeling not welcomed, um, feeling strange. So they did not. However, they did not have a shared perception or opinion on the Saudi community. So every person had different experience in the society. However, the recent changes um, developed in a during the recent years, and the recent social changes going on in Saudi Arabia have developed a kind of an aggressive um, discourse, and was a reason for a new emerging sense of nationalism in the country, and it is in a way affecting the millennial Palestinians' feeling toward the society. So they're feeling the society is changing, and they say some of them say that I no longer identify this society. I can no longer tell that this is actually Saudi Arabia. These people were Saudi-born Palestinians who have recently left the country, and they came back for a family visit or something like this, and they've noticed a really huge change that they cannot recognize Saudi Arabia anymore. Also, Saudi Arabia as a former place of residence for them is a source of identity and security. So they feel they're aware that they're strangers, and they will never be Saudis, but they have this intimate, romantic, nostalgic bond with the place of their precious memories. Um, Furthermore, Palestinian millennials, or millennial Palestinians, as I said, they always feel that they are outsiders, um, and there are two types of them. There are those who are isolated from the community; they're not integrated, whether intentionally or unintentionally. They deal with Saudis just as a necessity of life in Saudi Arabia, and there are the others who think um, themselves, who say that we're very social active, we are integrated into the society, and they take part in so many social activities, and they have so many friends and relations, and so on with members of the Saudi society. However, when it comes, it is always different when it comes to personal, close, intimate relations. So when choosing a best friend, millennial Palestinians will always choose or prefer Palestinian over any other nationality, and they will prefer an Arab like a Syrian, Jordanese, or Egyptian, Sudanese over Saudi. So choosing a Saudi as a best friend is always the last choice. Also, they have this sense of feeling that they're under threat of being treated unjustly because of this different treatment between Saudis and non-Saudis. So uh, Saudis have more access to rights than Palestinians. So there is this feeling that we might be mistreated. Now, this moving to the real shock that caused that really resulted in huge changes in most of people's lives. which began in July 2017. Because before that, people did not ever imagine moving to another country. So what happened in July 2017 is that Saudi Arabia uh, began a new tax for imposed on dependents or companions on expat workers working in Saudi Arabia. So each expat should pay 100 riyals on a monthly basis, or for each month, which equals $26.7 um, for each of their dependents or companions, meaning the children and the wife or the spouse. These fees are to be doubled each year until they reach 400 riyals in 2020. And no nationality is excluded from this decision. And it was shocking for Palestinians because they expected themselves to be excluded. And many foreigners, since the very beginning, since rumors started spreading, they always refused to believe that this is actually going to happen. So it happened accidentally. It was a real shock. Like, they were really surprised. They were not warned before of the huge financial burdens that would be imposed on them. Moreover, Saudis who are sheltering or hiring uh, illegal illegal foreigners will face fines and maybe jail as well. Uh, the Saudi Ministry of Interior have also launched a campaign to haunt those who are violators of the residency or work system. So in 1 year, the ministry have deported or arrested 2.54 million violators. So this decision found a real shock, and Palestinian families had to think for the first time um, in decades of leaving the country that they had long considered their permanent place of living. So the moment of shock was very influential and threatening. Over the past 2 years, families living in Saudi Arabia have undergone major changes, and just in 2017, around 466,000 people left the country. In a recent report issued in April, a total number of foreigners who left Saudi Arabia and labor market in the last 2 years was 1.6 million, meaning that around 1,500 of expats are leaving the country every day. So, in general, Saudi-born Palestinian millennials were raised with a strong sense of Palestinianness. So, Palestinian parents, regardless of the official documents, nationalities, passports, and the legal status of them in Saudi Arabia, they raise their children with the belief that they are Palestinians. And many of them were late to discover uh, the complicated reality and their state of statelessness, and they will later be told the story of the family, as many of the interviews have told us. So at the beginning, even if they are Jordanians, they wouldn't know that they are Jordanians. Um, they will always consider themselves Palestinians, and then later on they will discover that it is different from being Palestinian is different, and is different from the official documents. So it does not necessarily mean the same thing. So this complication is reflected on the way Saudi-born Palestinians define themselves. And the problem actually begins with Palestinian identity, uh, in that it is an imagined shared identity with a group of people that is scattered around the world. So they begin to ask questions like, what does it mean to be a Palestinian? And they begin to create their own definitions and their own links with this identity, or the cause, or the land. So it differs from a person to the other. This millennial Saudi born Palestinians is different from other generations because they're still forming their identity. They're still in the in the process of constructing themselves and building their future, and they found themselves that they found themselves in a situation where they have to change everything and sometimes carry um, responsibilities that were much um, heavier than they expected in a young age. So they have this kind of identity crisis, actually. So they're not Palestinians, but not Palestinians, Saudis, but not Saudis. They don't have links with Palestine, and they're unable to create links with Saudi Arabia. And whenever you ask a Palestinian, they give you where are they from, they will give you a long story, and sometimes they will ask you, are you willing to listen to what I'm going to tell you? So this one of the interviewees said, whenever someone asks them, her siblings, um, where are they from? So we tell them this, that we're Palestinians, but we lived in Saudi Arabia, and then they receive another questions, why you're not Saudis since you were born in Saudi Arabia, and they have to tell them that they have to explain the situation. So she said that I consider this country, Saudi Arabia, as my home. And she said, I know nothing about Palestine. I've never been to Palestine. I was born here, raised here, and my whole family is here. I know that I'm Palestinian, but I don't feel it. So the recent changes have enhanced the experience of alienation among Saudi-born Palestinians, as they are pressured to leave the country for a new migration that adds to their history of migration and displacement of the previous generations. And families are being scattered again. Some say that they're feeling that they're experiencing the diaspora of a Nakba that began with a Nakba in 1948. Also, those who have recently left Saudi Arabia for other Arab countries are facing fewer job opportunities. More are seeking immigration to the Western countries. We haven't finalized our findings yet. Saudi Arabia just a month or a bit more, 2 months ago, Saudi Arabia has announced that there will soon be something called or could be called the Saudi Green Card, or what is named as the privileged visa, where there is no sponsorship system, where foreigners can own their properties, they can own houses, they can own their businesses, and they can own their cars and so on. But still, this details about this new law or new visa were not announced yet, and many people are waiting for there are many rumors, but many people are waiting for a sense of hope that they might actually stay. So we decided to make another round of interviews and to make an updated version of the paper after this privileged visa program is announced. So thank you for listening, and we will be more than happy to listen from you. If you have any comments or questions or contributions or anything you would like to tell us, you can send us an email to one of these emails. And thank you very much.